Hello, welcome to this Meghan Monday update. If you are new here, my name is Meghan Dorman. I am a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and certified fitness coach, a CrossFit coach actually, in St. Pete, Florida, and I come here every week to talk about what I am personally doing to reshape my own body composition. Last week's video, I gave you a little announcement that I'm training for my first CrossFit competition in a very long time. It'll be in 4 weeks. It's called the Valor Games. It'll happen here in Tampa Bay on February 6th. And but the video before that, I had said that I was starting a 2-week MiniCut, and I talked about the value of doing short-term concerted fat loss efforts followed by diet breaks. So I was 1 week in to doing like a MiniCut. When I decided and told you that I was going to start training for this CrossFit competition. And I had not cut my calories very far, so it was not a big deficit. I still trained I felt great about my training this week, so I'll get to that in a second. So now I should be entering my second week of this MiniCut, and I'm going to tell you in a second what I think my plan is right now and why, just so you can follow along with how I make my own decisions for fat loss and for training, and just kind of how I adjust my own numbers. I wanted to get back to the functional nutritional therapy practitioner part, because basically what that means is I come from a very holistic school of thought, and I have been sort of steeped in ancestral health nutrition for over a decade. And so when you focus on food quality and you focus on eating animals that have been raised well, grass-fed beef and wild-caught fish and pastured eggs from pastured chickens, you know what we mean, or prioritizing organic best you can find and afford. So when you kind of adhere to a more paleo or ancestral like template for the quality of your food, typically that will tend to be a higher fat diet. Plats of avocados, like I mentioned, grass-fed beef, salmon, lots of eggs and egg yolks, a plethora of cooking fats for those that can handle dairy. I am one of them. I've healed my digestion to the point to where I seem to tolerate dairy just fine. So we cook in a lot of butter, coconut oil. Like, the sky is sort of the limit on fats when you are eating in that way, when you're prioritizing quality over quantity of food. And I don't take that back for anything. I fully endorse a quality first food perspective. What I will say is, when you are trying to build or preserve lean muscle mass, when you are training like an athlete, and when you are trying to lose fat but not muscle, so not just weight loss, but specific fat loss, when you want to preserve your muscle and lose only or mostly fat, a higher fat diet like that tends to be lower in protein. Because if you think about, like, take for instance a sausage, like however many ounces a sausage link is, if it is equal parts protein and fat, then you only have half of the volume of that food available for protein grams. When your diet tends to be higher fat, it also can push the protein content down, because there's only so much volume of food. There's a fixed amount of things that are going in your mouth, and the amount of that is fat takes away from the amount of that is protein. Also, the other thing with an ancestral template is that it tends to be pretty low in carbs, because I was completely grain-free for many years, so no pastas, no rice, no breads, like no oats, no quinoa, no corn. Like, we would have treats, like I would occasionally eat corn chips or something like that, but grains were not an intentional, constant part of my diet for many, many years. So when grains and beans and those kind of starchier foods are not part of your diet, then your carb sources are really fruits and vegetables. That's what you're left with. You have to go out of your way. If you're an athlete eating that way, you have to really go out of your way to make sure that you're eating enough potatoes, sweet potatoes or white potatoes or whatever, and plantains and starch squashes like pumpkin and butternut. And even those are very high fiber and very low carb compared to their grain counterparts. They're higher carb compared to other vegetables like broccoli, but they're much lower than a grain starch. So if you want higher carbohydrates to facilitate a higher level of training, which I do, then it's very difficult to get that from just just fruits and vegetables in my experience and in my opinion. There are definitely people who do it. I'm telling you all of this because my update for today is that I'm not actually going to change my calories for this week for the second part of the MiniCut, but I am going to shift my macro percentages, and I want to kind of use a few numbers to explain why. Don't freak out. I'll try to make it make sense as much as possible. It's not hard math. So just to back up a little bit, I had done a reverse diet, working myself up 100 calories a week. Not perfect, not linear, but I went through a concerted period of time from about August to, I would say, Thanksgiving, to about the holidays, August, September, October. So maybe 3 months, what is that, 12-ish weeks, where I was reversing my calories from what I think was very low, not on purpose, just by virtue of not eating breakfast and being a busy mom, not measuring my food, not paying attention, like just kind of going through my life and grazing when I felt like it and eating dinners with my family like most of my clients do. And I ended up being coming to the realization that I was probably eating 1,000 to 1,200 calories on any given day. And that is not good for fat loss. Your metabolic rate will adapt down to that level of fuel. So I spent August to November basically refeeding my metabolism, increasing by a small enough increment that I would not gain fat, and I didn't. My weight held strong at 155 for those 3 months and through the holidays as well, even when I wasn't tracking. So now I'm in a place where I think I was at a run rate of about 2,100 calories, I think, but I did not track the entire month of December. So I honestly don't really know. I was prioritizing high protein foods. I was prioritizing high fiber foods. I was measuring my portion sizes. I just wouldn't enter it. I didn't go to the trouble to enter it into the app. I was mindful, and I was probably pretty close just by my experience and knowledge of ballparking. But nevertheless, I didn't track in December. So I really don't know where my metabolic rate is. I don't know how many calories my body is really burning. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure what my maintenance calories are right now. So when I started this 2-week MiniCut, it was before I committed to train for Valor Games. So I was just thinking I would be doing my normal, a few times a week workouts and get a few walks in and, just like move my body and exercise and be healthy. But I didn't have like a fitness goal. And so I was thinking I was coming from 2,100 and I was just going to do a very conservative 2-week cut, little mini cut. I was just going to cut by 10% of calories. So that took me from 2,100 a day down to 1,900 a day. And I was just going to be really diligent about watching my protein, my fats, and my carbs and measuring everything in MyFitnessPal. And the way I set my split up was that 25% of my calories would come from protein, and that put me at a target of about 119 grams per day. I had it at 40% fat, and that put me at 84 grams a day of fat, and then the remaining percentage would be 35% of calories coming from carbohydrate. So that put me at 166 grams. So for the last week, I've been measuring diligently, eating 1,900 calories every day. I also increased my training because I committed to this Valor Games situation, and 1,900 felt like a great amount of food. I never felt hungry. I also didn't feel stuffed. I felt like if I ate my 4 meals, breakfast, lunch, like a mid-afternoon kind of mini meal, and then dinner with my family, I was perfectly satisfied. I felt recovered. I felt like I had energy. I also had my cycle this week. So when I weighed in, I've been 155 the whole time and hoping to lose a little bit of weight, like a pound maybe, or half a pound at least or something over the course of doing this like mini cut, because I've thought that I had cut by 10% of my calories, so that should have yielded at least a little bit of fat loss. The last time I did weigh myself, I was 158.6, but that is not fat. Like, I didn't gain 3.6 pounds in a couple of days by training more and being diligent about measuring my food. Like, that's not possible. And since it was the cycle week, that totally explains that, because you can hold on to additional water because of those hormone fluctuations by anywhere from 1 to 3% of your body weight. So anywhere from 1.5 to 4.5 pounds, I could have added onto the scale just by virtue of holding on to more water due to those hormone fluctuations. So it makes perfect sense that I was 3.5 pounds up that week. It's the only data point I have, so there very well could have been other numbers along the way if I had been more diligent about it. So here's where we're getting to my plan for this week. I thought about, for a second, I thought, should I cut my calories further? Because when I lead clients through a cut, I will let them go anywhere between 10 and 20% of calories to do a cut if they have gone through the process of restoring their metabolism and we are cutting from a higher number. I do not support people through cuts that would have them eat, that would have their cut calories ending up around 12-ish, 1,300 calories. That is too low for my comfort level as your friend and practitioner. So once somebody has worked their way up to a more healthy range of calories, as close to the 2,000s as we can get them, then we can do a cut of 10 to 20%, depending on your size and your athleticism. And like, it's very individual. I'm just saying the 1,200 calories that the magazines and the diet apps and all the things tell you to eat is not a healthy number for any person I have ever worked with, any grown adult I have ever worked with. That is a child's caloric budget. So my point was, we can cut anywhere from 10 to 20% and I'm comfortable with those. So I cut 10% from 2,100 to 1,900. I felt great, but I also didn't lose any fat. But I don't know if I didn't lose fat because of the cycle week or because it just wasn't a big enough deficit. I don't know. So I have two options now. I could cut further. I could go to 20% of 2,100. I could cut down to 1,680 calories and I could hang out there for a couple weeks and I could see how I feel. I would be totally comfortable with doing that for a short period of time. That's not a lot of food, but for a short period of time, I do not anticipate that my metabolism would adapt down to meet that low level of intake. I think for only 2, maybe even 4 weeks, you could still preserve your metabolic rate and your lean muscle tissue at a 20% cut. And then at the end of which, I would plan on reversing my calories back up to maintenance for like a diet break before possibly attempting it again. That is one option. I thought about that. Except that I'm training for Valor. So with my training volume going up, I do not want my calories to go down because I am afraid that it would put me at increased risk of, number one, bad training. Like I don't want to not have energy and like pop in the gym, but I'm more concerned that it would affect my ability to recover. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want any aches and pains in my joints. I don't want any pulled muscles. I don't want any fatigue that would hinder my ability to train hard and to do my best for the next 4 weeks. So cutting calories when I'm increasing training intensity just doesn't feel like a real good idea. So I'm going to stay at the 1,900. A third option would be I could actually go back up to 2,100. But since I felt so good on 19 last week and it was a cycle week, which means that your appetite is increased anyways. So if I felt good on 1,900, even on a cycle week, then I think I'm safe to stay there for 1 more week. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch the percentages of my macros because of the thermic effect of food. That's what I want to talk to you about today. So I had my 1,900 calories split at 25% protein, 40% fats, 35% carbs. However, because of the thermic effect of food, which I'm about to explain, I'm going to switch my macros for this next couple of weeks. The thermic effect of food basically means that the calories from protein require more energy to be broken down and assimilated into your body. The thermic effect of breaking down a protein gram can be up to 30%. So if you eat 100 calories worth of protein, up to 30 of those calories could it could be up to about 70 calories that are actually available to you to use as energy. 30 of them are kind of almost like erased, I guess, like because you use that amount of energy to break down the protein itself. So all that being said, you sort of end up at a net smaller number for your body to deal with if you have a higher protein diet, you're maximizing the thermic effect of your food. Fat has virtually zero. Carbs have anywhere from an 8 to 10% thermic effect. The more fiber it contains, the higher the thermic effect. So it costs you more to break down an apple than it does for you to break down something more simple, like a piece of bread. So the higher fiber foods, the higher the thermic effect of your carbs is. But nevertheless, protein is by a landslide more thermic, costs you more to break down, and that's what we want. when we're trying to lose fat and stay full and eat enough fuel all at the same time. So I think I'm gonna switch my protein from 25% of calories up to 30% of calories. I'm actually gonna bring my fat down because of its very low thermic effect. Even though fats are incredibly nourishing for you, they have been vilified wrongly. They support your hormone function. You need fats. Let's take the 40% of calories I was eating last week, 40% of the 1900. I was eating 84 grams of fat. Stay with me. There are 9 calories per gram of fat. So 84 times 9 equals 756 calories per day coming from fat, the way I was doing it before. If I switch my fat percentage down to 30% of calories, that is now 63 grams instead of 84. So 63 times 9 calories per gram is 567 calories per day coming from fat. Okay, so before I was getting 756 calories from fat. In this new way of doing it, I'll get 567. That's a difference of 189 calories. If you multiply that by 7 days in the week, then that is 1,323 calories that I'm no longer ingesting from fat, which has basically a zero thermic effect. Like all of those calories would be available for my body to store or burn or utilize in some way. So now I will have a much higher content of my diet coming from protein, which has a up to 30% thermic effect. So more of those calories are going to be burned just in order to break down the protein itself, to digest it and assimilate it. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go to 30% of calories coming from protein, 30% of calories coming from fat, and 40% of calories coming from carb. Previously, I was doing 35% coming from carb. I'm going to bump that up because my training intensity is going up and I want more fast energy to facilitate recovery, to make sure that I don't get injured, to make sure that I have plenty of intensity and pop and recovery, and that my body just has all of the resources it needs to perform at a more athletic, high intensity over the next 4 weeks. So I'm increasing carb, increasing protein, and decreasing fat. That is opposite of how I have eaten for more than a decade on an ancestral template. But I'm excited about it. I think I'm going to feel faster and leaner even if the scale doesn't show any difference. So I will update you next week if my weight changes at all, if my measurements change at all, how my workouts went, if I was able to still eat natural whole foods on that lower fat, higher protein template. That's difficult. You have to be creative with your cooking fats in particular. You can't just like drizzle, a quarter cup of olive oil over a big tray of broccoli and bake it. You have to be a little more intentional about the fats that you incorporate. So I'll keep you posted how it went. That is the new plan. 4 more weeks of training for Valor, and I'm feeling excited. So thanks for following along. Let me know what questions you have in the comments about the thermic effect of food, about how I came up with my calories, about how I track my percentages, how this might apply to you if you're not training for a competition, if your athletic needs are maybe a little bit less, like how you would apply this to your situation. Let me know what questions this stirs up for you in the comments. Thank you for being here. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a Meghan Monday. These come out every week. I'll be updating you all the way up to my 40th birthday in July, when I intend on being in the best shape of my life. So thanks for being here for it, and I will see you next week.